Good evening. We can get everyone to come to their seats. My name is Susan Dunn, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this evening. This church is thrilled to join with Buxton Books and Evening Post Books to welcome Marjory and have her Marjory launch her book. Marjory's actually part of this church family, so we're extra happy to be sponsoring her, even though she's gone off to do missionary work in Ohio. We want to remind you that there'll be a reception afterwards. There is an elevator to the reception. It's upstairs, but you can follow the signs and you'll find the elevator. There's one bathroom back here, but there are two other ones open downstairs if a line starts here. But we're very, very, very thrilled to have you here. And there's someone else who really wished he could be here who wants to welcome Marjory. Marjory, you may have to come up so you can see it.
My name is Jeremy Rutledge, and I am the senior pastor here at Circular Congregational Church. As it happens this evening, I am in Maryland, finishing up some medical treatment, but I really wish I were there with you. I think my heart is there with you. But Marjory, as we celebrate your poetry and the release of this book, I wanted to send these words for the occasion. For my friend Marjory. Last week, I walked past the National City Christian Church on Thomas Circle in Washington, D.C. I stood beneath its enormous columns, and I remembered your words. In order to bear witness, the church had once printed your poem, 100,000 Names, onto 3 banners, and then hung them vertically, facing the circle. Your words called us to stop and to feel, to wake. They spoke of our pandemic grief and the names and stories of our beloveds. We wear it all wrapped around us, you said, stained and bright, blue like a wound or the wind. I looked up at the columns where your words had once fluttered, and I mumbled them like a mantra or a prayer. Because that's what they are. That's what your poetry does. I want to thank you, friend, for all the ways you help us to ground ourselves in what is true. And all the ways you call us to join in that truth-telling and then use all the power of our lives, our art, our voices, and our energy to join in the struggle for a more just Charleston, a more just Springfield, a more just every place. It's an honor and a delight to have you back at Circular Church, one of your homes where you are dearly loved. When I return there, I'll stand in the sanctuary, just like I stood at National City, one more place where your words hang in the air as an invitation, a challenge, and a blessing. Aloha. Nui loa, Marjory, thank you for the gift of your words.
Wow. That was so powerful, Jeremy. Good evening. And welcome. I'm Polly Buxton from Buxton Books, and I am delighted and honored to join with the Circular Church and with Evening Post Books to welcome you here tonight to celebrate the very talented and much beloved Marjory Wentworth. Like many of you, I have known her since before she was Poet Laureate. And she has infused in our life and made her imprint on our hearts and in this town, and certainly on our bookstore. One of the beautiful people who, many of you are those two, but who believed in us before we knew what we were doing, and who supported us, and I will never forget that. And you are, it is just such an honor to be here to celebrate One River, One Boat, occasional poems and other stories. She, as you know, was humble and told me she didn't need this official bio with all of these accolades in it, but I told her that that's why we were here tonight. So I am going to read her official bio to you before we turn over to really quite an extraordinary program. Marjory Wentworth is the New York Times best-selling author of Out of Wonder, poems celebrating poets, with Kwame Alexander and Chris Colderly. One River, One Boat is her newest release. Her poems have been nominated for the Pushcart Prize 7 times. She is also the co-writer of We Are Charleston, Tragedy and Triumph at Mother Emanuel, with Herb Fraser and Dr. Bernie Powers. She is co-editor with Kwame Dawes of Seeking Poetry and Prose Inspired by the Art of Jonathan Green. And a little shout out to the Charleston Literary Festival, because Marjory and Kwame will be there, and you don't want to miss that. So let's come out in droves to support poetry at the festival. She served as the Poet Laureate of South Carolina from 2003 to 2020. And in 2021, she received the South Carolina Governor's Award for the Arts. Her archives are held at the James B. Duke Library at Furman University. She was named a Black Earth Institute Fellow for 2022 through 2025, and she currently teaches at Wright State University. And we are so thrilled that she has come home to Charleston to celebrate One River, One Boat. Love you, Marjory.
So, you may think this is a poetry reading, but it's really just a love fest. So, I want to introduce the Mary Edna Fraser, my dear friend, who did the cover art. Lucky me, and she has a few words to say.
Well, what an honor to be the cover of a book for Marjory Wentworth. Again, the photograph was taken from a jet, and then it was transcribed into silk. And dying, resist dying, it became popular before the written word. Isn't that amazing? Over 30 items on my resume are of my friend and collaborator, Marjory Wentworth. We share our deepest sorrows, our secrets, our joys, and we reconstructed our lives together after Hugo. The first time that I heard her recite, visions came into my brain. I began to study her world. I would circle lines, make art, make pencil sketches, and then art. It was a call and response. We cared for Michael Conyers when he was sick with AIDS. He was dying. So one day a week, we took care of him and we worked. He was a stellar actor, musician, and leader in our community, and the first to succumb to the disease. One day a week, when he slept, we worked, and our lives became entwined, linked by emotions that we had to express because we're artists, and our work is spiritual. Her poem, Wild Plums, spawned the monotype Apricots and Plums. Heaven's Light, a response to her poem, Grief. Marjory's chapbook, Night Jars, has the Batik Hawaii on the cover. And it coincided with a big show at the Gibbs Museum. And we typed her poems on dyed silk and straight pinned them to a piano. And it was an old-fashioned typewriter. It was a way of saying her poems are precious, worth your time, pinned with metal pins because they articulated pointed issues. The poem Shackleford Banks came from a trip we took to Beaufort, North Carolina, the same island I had walked with my boss, Dr. Orrin Pilkey, who is now 90 years old, the professor emeritus at Duke University. Marjory wrote, and I made watercolors. Our Barrier Island work was introduced at the North Carolina Maritime Museum. And as the poems became poems on plexiglass at the Museum of Art at Duke University, and then spoken word at his retirement, and South Carolina ETV recorded it. Peabody Essex had us there twice, her old stomping grounds in Salem. And then the Smithsonian Air and Space had us together presenting haiku, a workshop with Barbara Haggerty. Marjory's poetic lines graced the walls of an interdisciplinary show at the Gibbs Museum, Ashepoo, Cumbie, and Edisto. People didn't know about those rivers. What the Water Gives Me is dedicated to our children. 30 poems, 30 monotypes. They humanize the landscape, images of the mind, and language of the heart. Spring Island had us as visiting artists, gave us time to pursue our creative synergy. For the endless repetition of an ordinary miracle, my monotype, Abodes, is a cover, an extraction of disappearing homes. Circular Church has had us here twice for Earth Day, prayer flags and visual prayers. Our last venue was the Aiken Rhett House Museum with poet J. Drew Lanham, called Flight. Poignant in the slave quarters, their poems just spoke volumes. We acknowledge each other's grit, and we know what it takes to edit and to make a project that touches people in this overstimulated world. Pondering the first 41 pages of this book, I knew all of those poems. They were in my heart and my memory. But then when I got to the chapter, How to Love the World, that brought tears. I went to bed crying. I had one of those giant sobs. Difficult issues we face locally and as a nation. We artists usually work alone, but given the opportunity to intellectually exchange, we thrive. You hone your craft, you refine your thoughts. Marjory Wentworth succinctly conveys the human existence. Her words are windows to our minds, and they touch our soul. Listen and read, and she will touch you.
Oh my goodness, I mean, I don't know how to thank you, Mary Edna. I'd forgotten some of those things. But thank you so much. And I mean, how many people have their own personal artist to do their book covers, right? I'm so lucky. So I'm going to introduce the city laureates of Charleston. You know, a poet laureate's job is to create a vibrant poetry community in whatever ways they can. First and foremost, a poet laureate is an advocate for poetry. They find ways to expand the audience and promote the appreciation of poetry in various ways. And both Marcus Amaker and Asia May have been doing that for a long time, even before you were appointed city laureate. So I'm going to introduce Asia May, who's going to come up and read some of her poems. She's the current poet laureate of Charleston. She's my former student. I don't know what year it was. I don't know. But she's been active in the poetry community for some time. So Asia May is a humorist, a cultural worker with roots in Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. Well, none of this I knew when Asia May was my student, of course. A multi-hyphenated artist. I mean, just the name is amazing when you look at it with the little money sign. I love it. Their background spans across film, curation, production, performance, and language arts. Performing poet, community curator. I love that. I'm going to steal that term. Working still as an editor, I believe. I don't know. Occasionally. An organizer, featured at the Free Verse Festival that Marcus started, serves on the board of directors for the Black Ink Books Festival. Asia May is a watering hole poet, which I think is Nikki Finney started that, I think. It's out of Columbia, featured at the Gibbs Museum also, Charleston Food and Wine, Post and Courier, and a lot more, doing all kinds of interesting things. I read about a pen pal project you're doing Willie Kennard, that's so cool. So please welcome Asia May.
Okay, I'll come down a bit. Can y'all hear me? Okay, sometimes I tune my own voice out in my head, so I'm not sure if other people can hear me as well. But thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you, Marjory and Polly, for having us here. Like Marjory said, I'm a former student of hers. I did not know that she was the poet laureate when she was my teacher. She was just my creative writing teacher at the Art Institute, and I want to say that was 2010. And at the time, I didn't think of myself as any type of poet, any type of writer. I was in a film program, and I wanted to do set design. I still do set design. But in that time, in her class, she constantly reminded me that I had something special, that I had a voice that people wanted to hear, that people were intrigued by, that she was intrigued by. I know it's weird to say as your current poet laureate, but I honestly don't like being the main character. I don't like being front and center. It makes me very uncomfortable. And in that class, it made me have to be comfortable, because every week when we turned things in, she would point out how good my story was, or how much she enjoyed what I had written, and how more people needed to take risks and be funny. And it stuck with me, and she stuck with me. Again, I was in a film program. I wasn't trying to be a writer. And at every twist and turn, she would pop up and be like, I think you should submit to this. I think you should write something to this. You wrote this poem that one time, send me that. And I still get that to this day. And to some people, that might seem odd that a teacher would keep up with you in that way, but I'm very blessed to have her as a mentor, and as somebody who is constantly reminding me of who I am when I forget. Yeah, there's that. At this point in my life, because of Marjory and Marcus, I'm, again, your city's current poet laureate. And they often remind me that a big part of my voice is the way that I write about love. People don't think of love as something that has the power that it does hold. We often, especially in these times, we think of all the ways that we can fight things. And I choose to fight things with love. I choose to use my poetry and my voice to remind people that love exists and that it's powerful and that it can change so many things if we let it. Also, love can be used as a reminder that what you're doing is already enough. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to share a couple of those poems with you this evening. And then I'm going to get out of your face and go back in my show. All right. First, wow, I can hear everything in my mouth. I'm going to backpack. I hate mouth noises, sorry. The first poem that I'd like to share with you, I don't have a lot of poems about Charleston that are appropriate to read in churches. So I'm gonna start you off with a nice one that I wrote for a group of restaurant workers during the pandemic because I wanted them to remember how important they are to the fabric of the city. So this is called Song of the City. And if you've ever had to work a clopen shift, this is also for you. The day begins with a held breath. A swell of symphony teases the air as the 6 a.m. light on the Ashley Phosphate Bridge serves as conductor, and we rumble with a slow and steady hum. We, ever restless, await our cue, the opening chords laying fertile beneath our tires. The brass section takes over and a chorus erupts, our voices carrying from staff to staff as we prepare to add effects. We blend in the swift inhales behind dumpsters and company vans with the whirl of break room coffee and the creak in our plastered smiles, accumulating in crescendo with the ring of that first bell, ending on good morning. This is the song of our city, of hour-plus commutes and clopen shifts. This is the song that labors and lullabies long after closing time, even when it's too faint to hear. Thank you. Okay, I have to think about how fast I can talk through these. Okay, so, that was for the restaurant workers. This next poem is called Benefaction, and I was commissioned to write this for the Charleston Food and Wine Festival for the matriarchs of Gullah cuisine. And honestly, even if they didn't pay me, I was gonna write this poem. Because the way that Charleston's food culture and has blessed this city, the way that I feel so lucky to know what I know, and to know a lot of what I know from these women, from watching them and sitting in their kitchens. And when I was tasked to write this poem, it made me think of my grandmother and how much, like those women, she used food to show her love. So this is Benefaction. The first time I ever prayed, it was at a kitchen table. God bless the hands that prepared the food. Thank you for the love in them, the love that labors, cradles cheek and ladle, seasons and pinches with senses. I could sense what didn't need to be explained. I knew something greater than I existed, and we needed to give it thanks. It made sense why we gathered. Placed hand in hand, all cyclical movement, heads bowed, giving reverence to the energy coursing, the palms of another reminding us that we too, like good food, are warm and filling. We are worthy of being warm and a full life requires warm bodies to break bread with glad and sincere hearts to remind us that we are blessed. Blessed to be able to call upon a name for nourishment and have that call be answered, to share that blessing with others, to know how it feels to be truly loved. And so we gather, a recognized ritual passed from hand to hand by those chosen to lead, and before we partake, we give. Praise be to the chefs, and praise to the spirit of nourishment that moves through them that my grandmother named God, and we respect it by cleaning our plates. Let's see. Okay, I'll check my time. Meh. I feel like I've got about 2 more poems in me. Is that okay? Everybody still with me? Okay, I'm like, I know people are used to very quiet poetry. That makes me nervous. I need to know that you like it. You can also be like, meh, that works for me too. I like the feedback. It makes me feel good. Let's see. Thank you. Y'all are cute, and y'all catch on quick. I like that. Let's see. So, speaking of Miss Wentworth, there is a poem that she stuck on me for so long about sending to her for a project. And I was like, she wants this poem from like years ago? Why? And the more I procrastinated, the more she sent me emails. And then eventually, the more she was like, I'm gonna text you, you're gonna send me that poem. And I did. And it ended up being the very first poem that I ever published. So yeah, that is also to say, listen to Miss Wentworth when she tells you to do things. But I wrote this poem when I didn't feel like a poet, but I felt like my mom needed a pick-me-up. And she needed to be reminded, like, even though she's not the most vocal person, I see you, you know? I feel like mothers have the hardest job because you really don't get paid for it. And it often feels like you're unappreciated, and I needed my mom to know that somebody did. So this is figurative language for my mother, and it is the first poem that I published in This Is the Honey, a anthology of contemporary Black poets curated by Kwame Alexander. My mama doesn't speak of love. We feel it in the full dinners before the graveyard shifts, in the crisp pleats in our good clothes. She greases love on my scalp and my edges, maneuvers love by robbing Peter to pay Paul. Love be her ASL on good days. My mama doesn't speak of love, so we find a bridge in Mary J. Blige records. Mary be mama's Valentine's Day, mama's girls' night, mama's anniversary. Mary morphs mama's vocal cords, and we feel love dancing on the freshly vacuumed carpet in the hallways, bouncing off walls next to family photos and magazine pages, playing tetherball with sunbeams. Love done started a concert in the kitchen. Love done wrapped herself around us, smelling like warm, creamed grits and Black woman incense, looking 10 years lighter than before, skin the color of them pancakes she just flipped, with the edges perfectly crisp, with her edges perfectly laid. Love got her scarf still intact and her silk robe to match, running on 4 hours of sleep, anticipating that extra shift she picked so I could go on the class field trip. Love sits my plate in front of me with a forehead kiss and a song about heartbreak falling from her lips, and I know what love is without ever uttering her name, because I know her face and her voice, and when she sings to me, I never have to wonder. I always ask for an encore. I always know she's prepared. Thank y'all for your time this evening. I appreciate y'all so much.
You know, I chose that poem for you, John.
Oh, I know you did.
Oh, wow. Well, for all you teachers in the audience, wow, we don't realize the power we have, right? Thank you so much. So I'm going to introduce Charleston's Renaissance man now, Marcus Amaker. Graphic designer, musician with albums in poetry, jazz, and spoken word, recognized by the Kennedy Center, the Academy of American Poets Fellow, husband, father, opera librettist. I think he's the author of over 10 books. Who's counting? Anyway, yeah, 10, okay. But when I think of Marcus, I just think of the word friend. You know, when I was appointed poet laureate, we started this writing organization called Lila, and some of you remember, and Marcus was, I'll set up the website. Of course, Marcus had to do everything that had to do with graphic design. Did the books for our Poets in the Schools program at Burke High School. He was involved with just about everything we did. He's been doing poetry readings forever in schools. He's such an active member of the literary community, and I think just recently he was inducted into, we used to call it the South Carolina Academy of Authors, but now they call it the Hall of Famers. He started, so of course he was appointed the City Poet Laureate and started the Free Verse Festival, which is still going on in Charleston, which is the only annual poetry festival in Charleston. He received a Governor's Award for the Arts and was named Artist Residence in the Gelly Arts Center. I could go on and on. I think you all know Marcus, but he really is. I was thinking about it. Do I know anyone else who can do that many things well? I don't think so. Come on up, Marcus. I wanted to embarrass him.
I think the true testament of our friendship is that you knew me when I didn't have hair. Like that is.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah, I was a bald-headed.
I knew you before you knew your wife.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, I was a bald-headed fool. Now I'm a person with hair, and I'm also a fool. But Marjory, for me, still models the business of being a poet. I think that a lot of artists, we know how to write, we know how to get all the inspiration from the angels and be all like woo-woo. But when it comes to like writing an invoice, you know, like she has really taught me the business of being a poet, and I think that that is just as important as writing the poem. So I can't stress that enough. Because I used to come into town and be like, I'll do your stuff for free. And Marjorie's like, bruh, you have to eat. So this poem is probably track 3 on the greatest hits. And I wrote this poem a few years ago about Charleston. And I keep adding to it, and I keep adding to it because the city keeps shifting, changing, the energy. There's so much energy here, and it keeps going into places. Sometimes the spaces that it goes to is very nice. Sometimes not so much. Hotels are everywhere, right? How can we afford to live in this city, right? But the cocktails are good. We live in Charleston, where the sidewalks scream on Saturday nights and the corners rotate budding musicians with skin-tight dreams, where strings of pearls search for salvation, then sweat out their frustrations on the backs of rooftops, where the homeless sprout like weeds through concrete seeking $2, a handshake, and a little bit of sunshine, where the humidity chokes you out of your breath, but you still manage to speak to the spit-shine waiters who serve $95 bottles of wine, where 2 blocks away, a $5 pitcher of liquid gold spills on the canvas of sticky floors, where love lingers on cobblestone streets in narrow alleyways, but the smell of sex is the foundation for first and last impressions. We live in Charleston, where shadows are surrounded by the ocean and sea-seeing people gasp for air from knee-deep bills and dirt-cheap thrills, and those with no sense of history's melody sync with the songs of the city's slaves, where the poets scrape stanzas off of streetlights, and if we scream loud enough, maybe someone won't be afraid of the dark. I live in Charleston, where church steeples and cranes look over us, and multicolored houses still house live-in servants, where fast-rising hotels rise above slow-moving clouds that cast floods on the corner of America Street, where parades of one color get one day to celebrate, then hide in the shadows of gentrification, where Gullah cuisine is too expensive for Gullah people. The holy city, where the steady beat of jazz is the beat of our streets and the dialect of our past writes future conversations, where bridges and bike lanes break bread with politics while some of us preach peace with uneducated tongues, where the angel oak tree is young compared to our vanity, where $16 burgers are sold in the middle of a food desert while every community wants a piece of the pie, where grandmothers sit on porches watching us change, but the problems of our city remain the same. We live in Charleston, where the ghosts in the yoga studios call themselves holy, and the vintage market calls itself holy, and the whiskey drinkers go to church to feel tender and holy, where potholes and potheads blow smoke through steam-filled summers, and the pandemic was brushed away like palmetto bugs laughing in the face of death, while some of us dream of an underground scene to hold on to the spirit of elevation, where halter tops don't stop in the winter for people with disposable incomes and opposable thumbs, the holy city, where the hurricanes are coming. The hurricanes are coming. Another Charleston is being built above our heads. Maybe that one won't flood. Thank you. I remember somebody saying, you're the poet laureate of the city. You should love this city. And I'm like, that is love. When you marry somebody, it's in sickness and in health, right? Like, man, my city is sick, and I still love it. It's interesting to me that somebody gave me this microphone tonight, but because y'all are gonna have to get me off the stage. But for some reason, the media, who controls a lot of the narrative, doesn't talk about Walter Scott. And that was a really big moment for a lot of us. Walter Scott, I've watched your death hundreds of times. Recently, I counted the steps it took before the 8th shot grounded you. 13. You took 13 paces, running for your life in line and now online, the warrior stride of a 50-year-old body that died too soon. I wonder how many impressions your feet made before that moment. You probably walked hundreds of miles alive prior to poets putting numbers on your death march. Countless footsteps covering the earth as a son, a forklift operator, massage therapist, father of 4. I wonder how many more miles you would have walked holding your grandchildren. Would they have been aware of the deep layers of dark blues you carried as a black man living in the South? My mouth is tired of sounding out the syllables it takes to talk about America's favorite pastime, counting bullets and burying brown bodies. So we talked before this about doing poems about Charleston, and so much of my experience now of Charleston is being a father and interacting with this city as a father, and it's really nice. There's a lot of really fun things to do if you have a little 4.5-year-old. And watching her interact with this city is really cool, and it gives me a new perspective. And this is about her, and this is for Gail, Gail mentioned that this was her favorite poem. So I'm gonna read this. It's called The Gospel. Hopefully this is the one. Yeah, The Gospel. This is about my daughter. Consider yourself lucky if you have the presence of mind to remind yourself of miracles. We're too farsighted when looking up for evidence of heaven. Paradise can be a purely eye-level experience. For example, my daughter walks on water after every storm. Before the clouds have had a chance to make a dry apology for the mess they made, a little girl's feet find rapture in the leftover pockets of rain that overstayed their welcome. She's unbothered by the lingering silver that hangs around after a downpour, because joy doesn't have to go far to find a home. It can be directly in front of you, inviting you to make a splash and worship the gospel of everyday things. What's that? that one. And I'll do one more poem. I do want to speak just again about that last poem. It's so interesting to me because I'm of this as well. When it rains, my initial response is like, oh, it's raining. And then I realize, oh, that is an opportunity to play. Like it's been really fun to realize that. And in Charleston, we dance with the rain a lot. There's a lot of that. This is a new poem, and it's called Bless This Mess. And thank you, Marjory, for including me in this. And thank you all for the energy that I'm feeling right now. And thank you, Asia, for taking this. Bless this mess. In the lightning-quick game of life, many of us are still toddlers, loud and oddly graceful beings, constantly learning how to trust our bodies when life offers up a fall, sometimes proud and ungrateful, seeing ourselves as the center of it all. We're so messy. We don't know what to do when we slip up and scrape the skin or bruise the ego. We have to keep learning that each boo-boo goes deeper than the bone. We don't have the language it takes to accurately describe how hard it is to be in a wildly weird world where everything can seem bigger than you, where it can be a miracle to simply put one foot in front of the other, where a typical day means fighting ourselves and or fighting each other. We're so messy. And when we get older, we realize there's too many steps to step out of the door, to step over the dirty laundry littered and wrestling with itself on the floor, because we can't tell the difference between a cartoon, the Super Bowl, a soap opera, and the news. And it's hard to know which way we should go when we are working through our blues. We're so messy. And we have to keep adapting to the strange changes in our bodies as we crawl our way out of the mind's constant craving of junk food, junk television, junk technology. We're so messy and so beautiful in the strangest of ways. We blow candles and make wishes to celebrate age. We dream up stories to make weird and wonderful art, and we still make love, even with a broken heart. We're so beautiful. As we awkwardly adjust to the way being an adult has distorted our reality, how everything that used to be so big now seems so incredibly small, how everyone we know is still learning how to trust their bodies when life trips them up and offers that fall. We're so beautiful. Our sleepy brains are capable of vivid, sensuous, lucid dreaming. We even bless each other just for sneezing. And meanwhile, a toddler is somewhere screaming for love. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. You all okay? Need to stand up for a minute. We're running a little late, but bear with us. We're going to have a reception after. Do you want to stand up for a minute while I, just kind of move around and, Isn't it great to have a night of poetry, huh? So I'm going to read some poems from my new book while you're just kind of, you can do a little yoga, whatever you want to do. I want to thank Polly Buxton and the whole team from Buxton Books. I want to thank my publisher, Evening Post Books. I know Jacob's here, and Natalie, and the intern this summer, Dorothea. And I want to thank everyone from Circular who's here to help, especially Susan Dunn and Catherine. So I just want to say before I begin, the dedication to my book is to my South Carolina family. And a couple people said, well, are any of your kids still in South Carolina? Who's your South Carolina family? This is my South Carolina family. So, So this book is for you, and I'm actually going to bring Marcus up later. We're going to do a little duet. So I'm going to begin with a poem, Mary Edna's favorite, I think. It's called River, and I want to read it tonight because today would be Dottie Frank's birthday. Well, it's still her birthday, all right? And she loved my poetry and actually read my poems at the exhibit Mary Edna was talking about with all the rivers in the East Basin. And that's kind of how I met her. And she said, I want to put one of your poems in my book. And the next thing you know, this poem, River, was in her book Plantation, and they printed 850,000 copies. So let's all send our love to the heavens, and I'm going to read River in memory of Dottie. The river is a woman who is never idle. Into her feathering water fall petals and bones of earth's shed skins, while all around her edges men are carving altars. The river gathers flotsam branches of time and clouds, loosening the robes of their reflections. Her dress is decoupage, yellow clustering leaves, ashes, paper, tin, and dung. Wine, dark honey for the world, sweet blood of seeping magma pulsing above the carbon-starred sediment. Striped with settled skulls, wing, and leaf spine, the river is an open-minded graveyard. Listen to the music of sunlight spreading inside her crystal cells, magnet, clock, cradle for the wind. The river holds a cup filling with miles of rain. But when the river sleeps, her celestial children break the sticks of gravity, grab fistfuls of fish-scented amber, clotted with diamonds, ferns, and pedaling clouds, adorn bracelets of woven rain, rise with islands of sweetgrass and stars strung to their backs, to wander over the scarred surface of the earth like their mothers, simply searching for the sea. So thank you. So this book is comprised of essays and poems written for occasions, and some of them are big occasions, like a governor's inauguration or something. But this one was actually something I wrote after visiting the East Basin, I think, for one of the first times. So that was that occasion. All right, we have it is hurricane season, as Marcus mentioned, and I think there's a hurricane right now in Louisiana, right? Francine, I believe. Many of you who know me, and if you don't know, you'll get this book and learn that I moved here with my family a month before Hurricane Hugo. And it really impacted our lives and my work. And I included some pieces about it because the work that came out of that, the poetry, is what caught Mary Edna's eye and really were some of the poems that really established me as a poet. And I really don't think, without that whole trajectory, I don't think I would have been the poet laureate. So there you go. So this is a poem called Hurricane Season. And we're right in the middle of it, y'all, right? So, hurricane season. The blood moon thirsts all night, listening to unspoken prayers. She tugs the sea beyond itself until redundant waves retreating wash the yellowed marshes clean. In the heat that follows too much rain, people crowd the churches. On this September Sunday morning, their hymns begin to rise and slap the wind still raging. This is the music of bones entwined in mortal language, words of those who know the wind erases every footprint carved in earth, where water, tired as a dreamer, circling beneath oblivious clouds, blurs the variations painted on each human face. Into the open womb of the sea descend the ashes of our sins. What keeps us here? Not gravity or light, but rust on fences, holding every house of swollen wood, an ache, a tooth, the day moon adrift, grinding tiny islands down to bone. Yeah. I didn't know about the way barrier islands accrete and erode until I started working with Barry Edner and Orrin Pilkey. So Marcus actually endorsed my book and said, a poet is a historian. And I know Chelsea G's here somewhere, and yay! Great poet there too, we know it. She interviewed me for the Post and Courier and asked me about that quote. And you know, I am really interested in history you can't not be living here. And there was a project I was involved with poet Ray McManus, some of you may know, who lives in Columbia. And this was looking at old archives in the USC collection, and I was particularly interested in the earthquake. You know, Charleston has survived so many disasters. So this is a poem I wrote. It's a persona poem, meaning it's spoken in the voice of somebody alive in 1886. And, you know, the earthquake was the largest recorded earthquake on the East Coast, still. My son and his wife live in LA, and they had an earthquake today, but apparently it didn't affect them, thank God. So this is called Washington Square, Charleston, Tent City, after the earthquake, 1886. I no longer count the days, nor the long scorched nights passing like lifetimes. As soon as sleep finds me, I am running alone through the dark, while walls crumble and the earth, rumbling low like a wounded animal, rises and pitches beneath me. If not for the chimney bricks falling fast from the sky, I would swear I was at sea like a small boat in a storm. And this is how I feel when I wake up in the damp tent, my husband snoring beside me, the child inside my belly flipping like a confused fish. I light a candle and walk outside. The moon hanging low brightens the September sky, and I almost believe what they say about the world not ending. I count the stars as if they are my blessings, tiptoe back inside and touch the things we salvaged stacked on a table. My brush and comb, one silver candlestick, the family Bible missing its heavy brown cover. Thank you. Yeah, it's really interesting to read the accounts. You know, people said you could just feel just really, really terrifying. But that's where I got the information for that poem. So speaking of history, I'm going to read the title poem now, One River, One Boat. I'm so grateful to have this poem, you know, be the centerpiece of this book. You know, this poem, as many of you know, I wrote for Governor Nikki Haley's second inauguration. I wasn't asked to read it, and nor was I invited to the inauguration, but Congressman Jim Clyburn read it into the congressional record, and Senator Marlon Simpson read it at the State House, and far more people heard this poem than would have heard it if I'd read it at the inauguration. But anyway, so I'll share it with you now. A couple of things I want to say about it. Let's see, it's dedicated to Walter Scott and the memory of Walter Scott and Muhyiddin Dabaha, Black Lives Matter activist who we knew and loved very much. And it was just obvious that it had to be for them. And this there's an epigraph by Elizabeth Alexander, I know there's something better down the road. One river, one boat. Because our history is a knot we try to unravel while others try to tighten it, we tire easily and fray the cords that bind us. The cord is a slow-moving river spiraling across the land in a succession of S's splintering near the sea. Picture us all crowded onto a boat at the last bend in the river. Watch children stepping off the school bus, parents late for work, grandparents fishing for favorite memories, teachers tapping their desks with red pens, firemen suiting up to save us, nurses making rounds, baristas grinding coffee beans, dock workers unloading apartment-sized containers of computers and toys from factories across the sea. Every morning, a different veteran stands at the base of the bridge holding a cardboard sign with an empty cup, with misspelled words and an empty cup. In fields at daybreak, rows of migrant farm workers standing on ladders break open iced peach blossoms, their breath rising and resting above the frozen fields like clouds. A John boat drifts down the river. Inside, a small boy lies on his back, hands laced behind his head. He watches stars fade from the sky and dreams. Consider the prophet John calling us from the edge of the wilderness to name the harm that has been done, to make it plain, and enter the river and rise. It is not about asking for forgiveness. It is not about bowing our heads in shame, because it all begins and ends here. While workers unearthed trenches at Gadsden's Wharf, where 100,000 Africans were imprisoned within brick walls, awaiting auction, death, or worse. Where the dead were thrown into the water and the river clogged with corpses has kept centuries of silence. It is time to gather at the edge of the sea and toss wreaths into this watery grave. And it is time to praise the judge who cleared George Stinney's name 70 years after the fact. We honor him and we pray. Here, where the Confederate flag flies beside the State House, haunted by our past, conflicted about our future, at the heart of it, we are at war with ourselves, huddled together on this boat, handed down to us, stuck at the last bend of a wide river, splintering near the sea. You know, it's interesting, of course, when the poem was published, the Confederate flag was still flying near the State House. And it came down that summer, just barely, as we all remember. And we all remember what happened. So I'm going to share the poem Holy City. Where's Herb? I saw him come in. Here's my hey, Herb. This is the hardest poem I've ever had to write. Adam Parker called me the day after the shooting at Mother Emanuel and said, you know, they're going to have a church service this Sunday at the church. Because, as you know, it was underneath the church where the shooting occurred. And we want to do a pull-out section in the paper with personal tributes to the Emanuel 9. And we kind of see a poem going down the back of the page. I'm like, I can't write. I mean, you know, you remember, we had no words. But I said, okay, I'll do it. And Mary Edna found a videotape of Reverend Pinckney. And I think he was actually talking to a group right after Walter Scott was killed. And in the middle of the conversation, he says, only love can conquer hate. And I wrote that down, and I really felt like the poem just came through me. So, Holy City, obviously it's in memory of everyone who lost their lives at Emanuel 9. At Mother Emanuel. Only love can conquer hate. Reverend Clemente Pinckney. Let us gather and be silent together like stones glittering in sunlight so bright it hurts our eyes, emptied of tears and searching the sky for answers. Let us be strangers together as we gather in circles wherever we meet, to stand hand in hand and sing hymns to the heavens and pray for the fallen and speak their names. Clemente, Cynthia, Tawanza, Ethel, Sharonda, Daniel, Myra, Susie, and Dupain. They are not alone as bells in the spires call across the wounded Charleston sky. We close our eyes and listen to the same stillness ringing in our hearts, holding on to one another like brothers, like sisters, because we know wherever there is love, there is God. So I just want to say that poem kind of resulted in the writing of another book with Herb Fraser and Dr. Powers, We Are Charleston, Tragedy and Triumph at Mother Emanuel. And yeah, it's 10 years anniversary this summer. So I'm going to bring my buddy Marcus up here. Speaking of history, we're going to read our duet poem that we wrote for Mayor Tecklenburg's first inauguration.
And
2016. Yeah, we sat down tonight and couldn't remember how we did that.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of about, we called it reimagining history. So we wrote it together, so we're going to read it together.
Yeah, and then I think background of this was was learning about the history of Memorial Day and how that started here as well, and that was just a story that I felt like we needed to shine some light on. Yeah. So at Hampton Park.
You go first.
Yes. Okay, I'll go first. Though Charleston is a shrine to the past, where every alleyway and weather-worn road tells the story of a city resurrected, time is never standing still. Running beneath the surface are fault lines of our own making, reshaping memory brick by brick.
Horses crumble in the soil, hours crumble in the soil at Hampton Park, where horses ran laps for sport and Union soldiers were laid to rest, honored as martyrs of the race course. Now a statue of Denmark Vesey stands in this place, named for a Confederate general, as flowers bloom among the ruins.
This year, we've done laps around despair. We've grown tired of running in circles, so we stepped off the track and began to walk. As the earth shifts beneath our feet, we move forward together.
Our hearts unhinged guide us toward a city remade by love, into a future that our past could never have imagined, beginning today. Thank you. How come I don't know. You know, we've only read it twice, and I always mess it up. Anyway, okay, just a few more. I know we started late, but I want to read the poem that Jeremy spoke about, 100,000 Names. And for those of you who don't know, Jeremy is an amazing writer. He's also a poet. He loves poetry. And during the COVID pandemic, the church was closed, right? And people probably needed church more than ever in a way, right? So he said, I want something to put on the door, you know, maybe a poem, something that would just make people feel a little better, provide some solace, people who want to, can't enter the church, but maybe need a little spiritual acknowledgement and faith. And so it was when 100,000 people had died of COVID, and I thought it was just going to be this little poem on the door, and it ended up being this banner out front, and it was there for a while, and then, of course, later in Washington at the church that he was showing you the pictures. And there's many funny stories of people being in Washington, walking over and reading the poem, and then seeing the name and being quite astonished. But let me just find it. So this is called 100,000 Names, and hopefully it accomplished what Jeremy was looking for, 100,000 names. Whether it is morning and sunlight is seeping through overlapping oak branches, bursting with bright leaves, late in the day after rain has fallen and the scent of spring splashes across the washed sky, emptied of clouds and opening, you have arrived at this sanctuary, where the locked church door is never really closed to anyone. Step into the circle of grace woven from many threads that bind us across time and place. Let us mourn together the thousands upon thousands who have perished, so many alone, so many afraid, so far from the people they loved most, perhaps you or someone you know, cousin, coworker, neighbor, or friend. 100,000 stories left to tell, 100,000 voices suddenly silent, 100,000 names etched on the altars of our hearts. Our grief is collective, tear-stained and bright blue like a wound or the wind wrapping itself around you as you step back out into the world where the names of the lost are tumbling through the sky. Let's see. So every time I've read that poem, of course, the numbers got bigger, right? When Mayor Tecklenburg took office a second time and President Biden was being sworn into office, he asked all the mayors in the cities to acknowledge all the loss. And so I read this poem, and that day it was up to 450,000. I was literally getting memos from the mayor's office, like the numbers are, and of course we all know it was up to 1 million. But I also want to read another poem that's actually dedicated to Jeremy. It's called Advent, and for those of us who know Jeremy, COVID was a particularly difficult time for his family, and so this is a poem for Jeremy, Advent. All night, a steady thrum of cold rain on the skylight, the wind silent and hidden like snow falling elsewhere, puddles holding streetlight shine below like earthbound stars, as if the light came from within. This is what we hope for. Day breaks and we continue waiting, which is how we live through darkness. I know it's hard, we started late. I know we started late. I'm just going to read a couple more. This is for you, Asia. So few of us here, all the cool people, no, I'm not kidding. We used to teach at the Art Institute, and it was great to have an art school in downtown Charleston. And I was asked to write for graduation in 2011. Yeah, okay, so I wrote this poem, A Place for You. And I wanted to end, I'm going to read a couple of more uplifting poems at the end. Take time to hover at the still mouth of this ancient harbor and rise into the air which holds a place for you. Let the wind off the sea hold you above the daily cacophony before your hours fill with unintentional clutter, the way small clouds seem to fly the sky on days you are not paying attention. Do not ignore the ordinary. Each drop of gray drizzle, every stone and snapped twig, all the creatures thriving here. Because there are questions with no answers and many days you will wish to forget, savor each hour of sunlight when it permeates the sky, streaming through you like music. Listen to the glittering wings beating within the engine of your heart. I'm going to just end with a children's poem. So I wrote this wonderful children's book with my friend Chris Coderly and Kwame Alexander, and I found that writing children's poems is not that different than writing poems for adults. And I think it's for sale. It's called Out of Wonder. And the cover art is inspired by the poem I wrote about Rumi, who, was a 13th century mystic. I think he's still the best-selling poet in the world. And it kind of celebrates the arts, and that's what we're here to celebrate. Spin a Song, Rumi. Walk out of your room beneath the morning sky. Let the sun enter your heart and find a way to keep it there. Make a song from the light falling through the air and dance even when you are alone. Dance if you are still sad. Dance when you are tired. Dance until your feet lift off the ground like wings. And later, when the stars are spinning in the night, put your ear to the ground and listen to the songs rising from the earth. Everywhere you go, there is music. I think we're good. I want to see you all doing that now. So that's, a children's poem, and there you go. I think we're going to end now because we started kind of late, and, there's more fun to come. We're going to all move over to Upper Lance Hall, which is, I guess we just go out that door. Where's my fearless leaders here? And we have more books over there, and you can ask us questions, watch us dance, lift our feet off the ground. And Marcus and Asia have books here, and we have some snacks, and right, Polly, anything else I'm supposed to say? Yeah, so come on back that way. Thank you so much. You're a great audience.